Hey guys, I'm going to share my story about rising above the influence. I was never under the influence, but I was under the pressure of doing drugs and, alcohol. Not really much sex, but drugs and alcohol. Like, more friends pressured me to do stuff I never wanted to do. But, I was inspired to make this video when I saw the commercial about rising above the influence, and all of y'all's stories is just so beautiful, and I want to share mine. Well, me being a teenager, there's going to be a lot of pressuring with like drugs and stuff, and alcohol, and sometimes sex. I was never really pressured to have sex, but I was pressured to do drugs. I knew it wasn't right, of course, so I always said, no, I'm not going to do drugs, I'm not going to do it. And, people would bully me because of that. And, it really hurts, Just the fact, you don't want to do that for your life, you don't want that for yourself, but people just say rude things like, you're no fun, you're boring, that's why nobody likes you, because you can't have fun. Who says you have to do drugs and have sex and to drink alcohol in order to have fun? Who says that? I can think of a million things in this big, bright world to have fun. I can think of a million ways to have fun without doing that stuff. Because later on in life, that stuff will affect you seriously. It will. It will. I say this because I'm speaking the truth and I care, not because I just want to follow the rules, it's so hard. Like, I have some friends who are addicted to drugs, of course. Like, they're just terrible at it. It's just, they're so addicted to it. That's just all they want to do. Like, I know this one of my friends, she was so addicted to it, she would skip school, she would skip class, she would just skip just to go get high, and then, she kept doing this for a numerous amount of times, and, she's not going to get away with it for very long, because, you can only go for so long doing something until you finally get caught. So, she skips class again one day, goes gets high, and then a cop catches her, and she gets arrested. Now, it wasn't really a surprise to me because, she was going to get caught eventually. You can't get away with that stuff. You have to face the consequences. But, the things people would say to me, like, you need to have some fun, you need to live life, you only live once. And I know you only live once. And, if I were to die tomorrow, I want to live my life being a good person, being known. I don't want to be known as someone who does that stuff. I know it's your life, and if you want to do it, then great, but, why would you pressure other people to do something that they don't want to do? Like, if I don't want to go get high, then I don't want to do it, then I don't want to do that. It's my life. If I'm missing out, then that's my problem, not yours. So it's like, why are you pressuring me about it? Like, why can't you just do you? And just, like, you feel that if you took the easy way out by doing it, it's like a huge weight getting lifted off your shoulders. But you don't realize that you have more power than that. You're stronger than that. And you can rise above it, of course. You're better than that. You don't have to stoop to their level. You don't need to prove anything to them. Because I told myself, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to prove anything to these people. I don't need to prove that I'm a fun person. I have a great personality. I don't need to prove any of that. Because, like they say, if people are pressuring you to do something that you don't want to do, they're not your real friends. They're not, And if they're dumb enough not to realize that you're a great person, then get away from them, Find new friends, of course. But in our society, when you try to find new friends, they all end up being the same. Of course, that's how I am. I think some of the reasons why people do that is because of, society, media, parenting, YOLO, and peer pressure. Just in case, YOLO, you only live once. I think with society, when you're around people who do stuff like that, who drink, who have sex, who do drugs, you feel that when you're around that society, you're eventually going to do it. And, peer pressure, it's like, like I said, your friends are pressuring you to do this. It's like, why are you pressuring me? Like, why? You're supposedly my friends, and you're doing this to me. You're breaking me down inside. But I'm telling you, it's all worth it later on. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to, if you're my age, if you're like me, if you're a teenager, you're not going to have to worry about, any of that extra stuff. Because, having sex, drinking, doing drugs, has serious consequences. Like with sex, you can get pregnant, you can get sex diseases, you can get a bad reputation, you can get all of that stuff. And who wants that, With drugs, like I said, like, you could be surprised if you saw, like, some people at my school would just come to school high. It's like ridiculous. They would come to school high, and you could tell that they were high, and they would get arrested for it, obviously. Now, I'm not making this video to offend anyone. If anyone has been through this, I'm not making this video to offend you. I'm doing this to help you, encourage other people to not go through this. You gotta avoid it. You can take two paths. You can either take the right one or the wrong one. You can either take the right one by taking the right steps, making the right choices, being around the right people, or you can just take the easy way out, get into peer pressure, and just ruin your life. I mean, I understand it's hard. It's so hard. But you have to get away from that. With me, when I'm around people, there was this one time where all my friends were getting high, and I was just sitting there, minding my own business. And, while they were getting high, I just thought to myself, I wonder how that feels. I wonder how it feels to, smoke. I wonder how it feels. But, I obviously wasn't going to do it because, I'm better than that. And I just thought, maybe if I just try it once, who's it going to hurt? If I just try it once, then I won't ever do it again. But then something in me, I don't know, maybe it was the Lord, Spirit, my conscience, something in me just said, no, don't do it. Don't do it. And I trust my instincts. So, I obviously didn't do it. But, like I said, it comes with consequences, just people making fun of you, make you feel like you're worthless. But you don't understand you have more power than that. You have the action to say no. And at the end of the day, you're not going to be the one having an STD. You're not going to be the one having a child. You're not going to be the one getting used. You're not going to be the one who's drunk, wakes up the next morning with some random guy beside you you don't even know. You're not going to be the one who damages your body. You're going to have higher expectations for yourself. Please don't give in. I know it's hard. But trust me, you have to find those right people out there. I sometimes feel I'm like the only person who understands me, but there are people out there who are just like me. And I try so hard to find those people. And